Hey, what's going on everyone? Justin here, and in this video we're actually going to be doing a tag for once. It's been quite a while since I've done a tag video, so if there's been some tags kind of floating around in the ether or on BookTube and all that you'd like to see me do, leave a comment down below and I'll see if I can get around to start doing some tags again. Now this one is a really cool one, coincides with Nonfiction November. This was created by Julie over at Bookish Travels, and she has a great channel that she's pretty much always sort of highlighted nonfiction stuff, so I'll leave a link to her video down below. Definitely check it out if you like nonfiction. But yeah, this is the Nonfiction November book tag, and let's just get right into it. I love the questions on this because all of them are kind of more like discussion-y based, if that makes any sense, even though I still have like a giant pile here. But let's just like get started. Question number one is, what motivated you to pick up your first nonfiction book, and can you remember it? And I'm not gonna lie, I can't remember my first like real like nonfiction book. I'm sure I read some in high school and everything, but what I will say is in college, that's when I first got into philosophy and history. I didn't really like, I think I mentioned that on the channel before, but in high school I didn't like history. History was just like whatever. But it wasn't until I started doing philosophy in college, and then I wanted like more context and understanding of like the time period of like the classical world, and that's sort of what drew me into like ancient history and everything. But one of my favorite, I guess earliest ones I can think of here, right here we got, this isn't even like a book that you read straight through, it's more of a companion kind of encyclopedia book, but it's Late Antiquity, A Guide to the Classical World by Bowersock, Peter Brown, and Oleg Grabar. And Peter Brown is super famous with Late Antiquity. He's kind of the one who almost basically coined the term late antiquity, I think in like the 70s, 80s, with one of his like seminal works. But anyways, like I said, this one's more of like a encyclopedia kind of dictionary kind of thing. One day I might read it straight through. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not gonna do that. But I have read quite a bit, just kind of like flipping through, like finding different things and everything. I guess things come up. But late antiquity, I guess, was like one of the one of the time periods I feel like that just was like really unique and interesting, that just didn't get talked about a lot and stuff. And late antiquity, for those who don't know, is kind of the time period of, I guess, like kind of the dominant period of like the Roman Empire through like the early Middle Ages. So roughly like, like 300 to like 700. Just a very transitional, kind of weird, quirky time, I feel like, in the West and everything. And like I said, I don't know, I like reading stuff on like the classical world, ancient world, late antiquity, and stuff like that. And I guess I think that kind of answered the question. Number two, how do you choose your next nonfiction read? So generally, I have, ideally, I have a I have a science book. Usually it's got some kind of nature-ish stuff involved. Though I've been branching out a lot, like with my science reading challenge and everything. But I usually try to have a science book, a history book, and every now and then I also have like a philosophy book kind of on the go as well. But generally what I do is, like, as I start kind of approaching finishing one, I'll either just like focus on getting the other one done, between like the history and the science or whatever, or I'll just like start kind of like the opposite, if that makes any, probably not really. So like if I have a really dense history book, I'll probably pick like more of a popular history book that's just like shorter or something, that kind of thing. And I don't know, like this one is my next upcoming book. It's Carl Sagan's A Demon Haunted World. I feel like it'll fit the time period quite well. This is kind of like a science and philosophy pick for me, in that sense. So when I'm finished like my current science read, this will be the next one. But yeah, I just feel like it's one I wanted to do. I recently just did a video of like all the videos, or all the books that I want to finish before the end of the year, and this is like on that list. So every now and then I do try to be a little bit structured, but yeah, usually it's more just kind of willy-nilly, like on what I think I would find interesting, that's kind of like a break from whatever I was just reading about usually. But yeah. So number three, do you take notes or annotate your nonfiction books? So I have never taken notes over like history. Science, I've literally like just done my first one like the other day starting. I mentioned, I think in my last video, I started a gloom and doom journal, just to like put all like my sad, depressing facts on the environment or ecology or in the animal kingdom that I'm like reading about. I don't even really know why. But that's kind of the only sciencey one that I've done so far. But I do have a few philosophy journals, for example. Like this is just kind of like my general interest philosophy journal, because like some things just don't like fit like super well. So I just like take notes like as I'm reading and that kind of stuff. I don't know. I'm still kind of like learning how to take notes, like what I actually like and find useful with note taking and everything. Because I've only just started that since about summertime. For example, like this is probably going to be the next book I take notes over, just to kind of brush up on some logic, is DQ McInerney's Being Logical, which I've heard is just really good for that sort of thing. But yeah, I would say like, yeah, really, philosophy is pretty much the only one I take notes over, and then I'm going to have like a couple, like maybe a couple nature journals, but those are going to be more just like kind of fact collecting per se, if that makes any sense there. Number 4, have you read a nonfiction book that has challenged your beliefs and assumptions? And yeah, I would say I have. I'll probably talk about it a little bit later. Every now and then I read kind of books on sociology or social work, that kind of thing. They don't always like necessarily challenge my assumptions or whatever, but they do bring in like new perspectives. But I've also in the past read some stuff, you know, like I've actually read several works on apologetics and everything. I definitely think that would like kind of fit that category, if that makes any sense, if you know that kind of thing. But other than that, I think those are probably the only ones. There are a couple actually on my TBR, like that I want to read. Like there's a couple, I don't want to say they're like anti-climate change books, because that's just like dumb pseudoscience, but like there are a couple like quirky ones that are, I guess, like the conservative interpretation of climate change or something, where it's not like climate change denial, but like I said, I'm not even really 100% sure what it's supposed to do. There's, I think, like 3 of them or so, I think, that I can think of. But I'm just gonna like kind of go into them and at some point, and I guess just see what it's about. Like I said, I figured that would probably fit that category as well. All right, number 5 is, how do you feel about the intersection of storytelling and factual content in nonfiction? So with like history and travel memoirs, I found them very, very hit or miss. Philosophy, can't really think of too many that it's very like author insert like into the work or anything. But I will say with science, but especially like nature writing is like the perfect medium to like to put your memoir stuff in, put your like little personal vignettes in, like, you know, whatever your personal takeaways are from like this, that, or the other thing from nature or ecology, or just like your like kind of time spent outdoors and whatnot. I find nature memoirs are probably like the best kind of blend of like the two things. It just does so well. I got like 2 books here, like I just pulled them off the shelf. Lab Girl by Hope Jahren is like super famous, and this is all about kind of like the nitty gritty science stuff of, you know, how do you run a laboratory, how do you get money from like, you know, the National Science Foundation, that kind of stuff. But also, you know, her personal like travails against like, you know, very like male dominated system as far as like getting tenure and getting like, you know, that grant funding and stuff like that. So I found that really interesting. That one's pretty popular, that a lot of people love. Here's like another one, Birding Without Borders, An Obsession of Quest in the Biggest Year in the World by Noah Stryker. And he temporarily had the record for the most different bird species identified and seen in a calendar year. And for example, so you get a little bit of kind of like the, you know, the nature ecology. Obviously, this one's a little bit more bent towards like the memoir style, but you know, the entire book, it's him traveling around all these different ecosystems and meeting up with like different birders and things like that, and you know, trying to find and spot and identify birds and stuff like that. So I just feel like I said, nature writing just combines so well with personal like storytelling. Just find that awesome. All right, number 6, is there a topic you wish authors would explore? And I would say yes. There's a couple like super nitty gritty niche science books that I'm sure there probably is like a couple books on. Like for example, Dragonflies are my favorite. I got a couple Dragonfly books. I don't think I've ever seen like a popular science Dragonfly focus book. I'm sure there probably like is one if I just like looked hard enough. Like another one might be like a nitty gritty book on what do you call it? The not necessarily habitat destruction, but like kind of like habitats, you know, being crisscrossed with roads, and fragmentation was the word I'm like looking for. I'm sure there's probably like books on that, probably some scholarly ones, but I don't think I've seen like a popular science one on specifically habitat fragmentation and things. Find that would be interesting. As far as like history goes, I feel like ancient Greece doesn't get as much. There are definitely like plenty of books on like ancient Greece and stuff. I just feel like I don't see as many. First of all, ancient history isn't like super popular, but in the big scheme of things. But I feel like Rome definitely like always takes the priority there. I feel like Greece is usually like on the back burner, especially kind of the more interesting like niche topics. But if we want to get really niche for Bronze Age stuff, ancient Near Eastern stuff, there needs to be more of it. There was kind of like a mini boom like 2 years ago. There was quite a few. But for example, like the Hittites are my favorite ancient you know, let me know what your favorite ancient Near Eastern Bronze Age culture is down below. I feel like everyone should have one. Mine's the Hittites, and I have like 4 books on them, but I honestly can't even think of the last time I've ever even seen one like in a store ever. Like I don't remember ever even like thinking of like seeing one like pop up like on my radar, like when I search for new books and stuff like that. So yeah, plenty of topics I wish people would explore a little bit more. Number 7, do you incorporate insights from nonfiction into your daily life? I like to say that I do. Like, for example, like that social work kind of stuff I kind of mentioned, just to kind of keep me grounded and like just keep different perspectives and different populations and population groups kind of like in my mind and everything. Like, for example, this one I read this year, The Unclaimed, Abandonment and Hope in the City of Angels by Pamela Prickett and Stefan Timmermans. So this is all about basically deceased people. If no one claims the body, what actually happens there? What is the process? You know, that person's body like kind of goes through like after death and everything. You know, it's kind of just a really like heavy topic and different stuff like that. But like I said, just kind of makes you think and like kind of just consider other points of view a lot. So I think in that sense I do. With like a lot of the nature writing that I read, you know, I kind of like to just kind of take it in mind so I can, you know, like try to like see what they see, like when I'm outdoors and everything, even if it doesn't necessarily apply because it's like a different ecosystem, but kind of the general principles there. Though I do have like a whole field guide section of my library, so I feel like that actually, you know, is kind of like a literal, you know, do you incorporate insights from that nonfiction into my daily, like, yeah, there. Alright, and then lastly, we got number 8. Choose just one book from your nonfiction collection to highlight. And I cheated and picked 3. So I picked a philosophy book, a history book, and a science book. All really good books, not necessarily like my favorites or anything, but for a philosophy one that I read this year, we have Think by Sven Brinkman, and this is kind of just like a love letter to like being cognizant and doing like heavy thinking and using like critical thinking skills just for fun and stuff. In a way, and why it's good for you and why it's like important to like do. I just found it. Plus, I got suckered in. Like, I think I was like, I was stuck in like a hotel for a day or two. I remember downstate, and I just was like in the local bookstore, and I was like, oh, I just got suckered in by this like minimalist cover. I thought it was awesome. A history book that means actually quite a bit to me. It's not like I said my favorite history book or whatever. I don't think it's like the best, but very sentimental. First Punic War by J.F. Lazenby. I remember loving like reading about like the Punic Wars when I first got into like ancient history, and you always read about Hannibal and the Second Punic War and everything, and I find that one fascinating as well. But you know, there's 3 of them, and everyone glosses over the first one, like even though the first one was like 23 years long and everything. And this was at the time when I read this like 10 years ago. This was like the only book in English that even really dealt with the war, like kind of like on its own. And I just did a huge deep dive into all kinds of like Roman Republican era stuff, and I had like a website temporarily, and I wrote like a bunch, like I think 30 or 40 articles like on the First Punic War. So like I said, I have a soft spot for that one. And then one really cool just for me, because I live in like, you know, the frozen north. We got burned. Heinrich's Winter World, The Ingenuity of Animal Survival, and this is all about, you know, how do bees, how do foxes, how do, like, golden crowned kinglets, how do they all survive, super harsh northern winters? And then Bernd Heinrich is really cool. He does a lot of his, like, science and studies and stuff from his, like, log cabin in, like, the western Maine woods, which is pretty close to, like, not like that close per se, but same, like, ecosystem as Maine stuff where I'm in northern Maine. So just find that super awesome, super fascinating. Just love reading his works and stuff like that, and a lot of people have enjoyed that one as well. So there you have it. Those were the 8 questions, and the last one here, number 9, is to tag people. And what I'm gonna do is tag all the other co-hosts for Historathon. So for those who don't know what that is, it's all about reading history books throughout the entire year. Just really cool. It's got a really awesome Discord server and everything. And there's a whole slew of just awesome co-hosts. I think about 10 of us now at this point. So I'm going to leave them all down below. Definitely check out all their channels. Check out the Historathon Discord if history book reading is your thing. I think you'll definitely like it. So thank you again, Julie, for tagging me in this video. And whether you're reading nonfiction or not, always remember, read victoriously.